The marble floors of First National Bank gleamed under fluorescent lights as the afternoon rush began to thin. Keisha Williams adjusted her blazer and checked her watch. 3:47 p.m. She had exactly 13 minutes before her daughter's school pickup, but this couldn't wait another day. "Next," called out teller window 3. Keisha approached with a manila folder tucked under her arm, her heels clicking purposefully against the polished stone. The nameplate read, Miranda Collins, Senior Teller. A middle-aged white woman with perfectly styled blonde hair looked up with the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Good afternoon. I need to make a large cash withdrawal from my business account," Keisha said, sliding her ID and bank card across the marble counter. Miranda's smile flickered. "How large are we talking?" 15,000. The smile disappeared entirely. Miranda picked up Keisha's ID, studying it like she'd never seen a driver's license before. "Mrs. Williams. And this is for what purpose exactly?" "I'm sorry?" "Well, 15,000 is quite a lot of cash. We have procedures for large withdrawals, security protocols." Miranda's voice carried that particular tone, the one black people recognized instantly. Polite condescension wrapped in corporate policy. Behind Keisha, an elderly white man cleared his throat impatiently. She could feel eyes on her back, other customers checking their phones, whispering, waiting. "It's my money," Keisha said evenly. "From my account. I have all the proper documentation." "Ma'am, I understand you believe that, but I'm going to need you to verify some information. When did you open this account?" 2 years ago, October 15th. Miranda's fingers moved slowly across her keyboard, each keystroke deliberate. "And you're saying this is your business account?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Keisha felt heat rising in her chest, but kept her voice steady. "That's exactly what I'm saying. Because according to our records, this account shows some irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" "Large deposits, unusual patterns, the kind of activity that raises red flags." Miranda leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "I'm sure you understand our position. We have to protect our customers from fraud." A woman behind Keisha whispered to her companion, "This is taking forever. Why doesn't she just go to an ATM?" Keisha's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I've banked here for 2 years. My account is in good standing. I need to make this withdrawal today." "Well, I'm afraid that's not going to be possible without additional verification." Miranda's voice grew louder, attracting more attention. "I'm going to need documentation proving the source of these funds. Tax returns, business licenses, employment verification. I have my business documentation right here." Keisha opened her manila folder, pulling out neatly organized papers. Certificate of incorporation, tax ID number, bank statements from the past 6 months. Miranda barely glanced at the documents. "These could be forged. We see it all the time. People trying to launder money, cash fraudulent checks." She raised her voice even more. "I'm sorry, but I cannot authorize this transaction." The lobby had gone quiet except for the soft ding of the security entrance and whispered conversations. Phones appeared, some customers pretending to text while their cameras captured the scene. "Are you accusing me of fraud?" Keisha asked. "I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm following bank policy." "Then call your manager." "Ma'am, getting upset isn't going to help your situation." "I'm not upset. I'm asking for your manager," Miranda sighed dramatically. "Fine, but he's going to tell you the same thing." She picked up her phone. "Mr. Henderson? I have a situation at window 3. A customer is demanding a large cash withdrawal and, well, I think you should come see for yourself." The manager appeared within minutes, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and a navy suit that screamed authority. He looked at Keisha, then at Miranda, and his expression immediately shifted to what she recognized as damage control mode. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm branch manager David Henderson. I understand there's been some confusion." "No confusion," Keisha replied. I need to withdraw $15,000 from my business account. Your teller is refusing to process the transaction. Well, I'm sure we can sort this out. Miranda, walk me through what's happening here. Miranda launched into her explanation, speaking as if Keisha weren't standing right there. Large cash withdrawal, unusual account activity, couldn't provide adequate documentation for the source of funds. I provided documentation, Keisha interrupted. She barely looked at it. Henderson examined Keisha's papers with the same dismissive glance his employee had given them. These appear to be in order, but you have to understand, $15,000 in cash raises certain compliance issues. We have federal reporting requirements, anti-money laundering protocols. Then file your reports. Process your protocols. I'm not leaving without my money. The manager's tone shifted slightly. Ma'am, I'm trying to help you here, but if you continue being difficult, I may have to ask you to leave. Difficult? Keisha's voice carried across the marble lobby. I'm being difficult by trying to access my own money? Every eye in the bank was on them now. Phones were definitely recording. A security guard near the entrance straightened up, hand moving instinctively toward his radio. Look, Henderson said, lowering his voice in a way that somehow made everything worse. Why don't you try coming back tomorrow? Give us time to properly verify everything. I'm sure we can work something out. I need this money today. Well, that's just not going to happen. The words hung between them like a challenge. Keisha looked around the lobby, at the customers recording with their phones, at the security guard now walking toward them, at the teller who'd started this whole mess. She straightened her shoulders and met Henderson's eyes directly. Sir, I'm not leaving this seat. Henderson's face flushed red. Excuse me. You heard me. Keisha remained perfectly still, her hands folded on top of her documentation. I'm a customer in good standing, requesting a routine transaction from my own account. I'm not moving until you process my withdrawal. The bank manager looked around nervously. The lobby had grown crowded with people pretending to conduct business while actually watching the drama unfold. He could see phone cameras pointed in their direction, could hear the soft murmur of commentary. Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to call security. Call whoever you need to call. Henderson gestured to the security guard, a thick-set black man in his 60s named Jerome Washington. Jerome had worked bank security for 15 years and had seen this exact scenario play out too many times. He approached slowly, clearly uncomfortable. Ma'am, Jerome said quietly, maybe we should step outside and talk about this? Keisha looked up at him. Officer, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm trying to conduct legitimate business at my own bank. I understand that, but Jerome! Henderson snapped. Escort this woman out of the building. Now. Jerome hesitated. Behind them, Miranda had picked up her phone again. Yes, 911? I need police at First National Bank on Maple Street. We have a customer who's refusing to leave and causing a disturbance. The words police and disturbance rippled through the lobby like electricity. More phones appeared. Someone near the door whispered, This is about to go viral. You called the police on me? Keisha asked, her voice carrying disbelief that everyone in the bank could hear. Ma'am, you're trespassing, Henderson said. You've been asked to leave and refused? I'm trespassing at my own bank. A young white woman in line pulled out her phone and started recording openly. Excuse me, she called out, but I withdraw cash here all the time. Why can't she? Henderson spun around. Miss, please mind your own business. This is my business. We're all customers here. An older black man near the entrance shook his head. Same old story, different day. Miranda's voice cut through the murmur. Yes, officer, she's still here. African-American female, probably in her 30s, wearing a dark blazer. She's being very aggressive and won't listen to reason. Aggressive? Keisha stood up slowly, and several customers instinctively stepped back. I've been sitting here calmly, asking for my own money. How exactly is that aggressive? Henderson held up his hands. Let's everyone just calm down. I am calm, Keisha replied. The question is, why are you so afraid of a black woman trying to access her own bank account? The words hung in the air like an accusation. Conversation stopped. Even Miranda paused her phone call. This has nothing to do with race, Henderson said quickly. But his voice lacked conviction. Doesn't it? Keisha looked around the lobby. How many white customers have you asked to leave today? How many times have you called the police on someone trying to withdraw their own money? A middle-aged white man in a business suit stepped forward. I withdrew $8,000 last month. No one asked me for documentation or questioned my motives. Henderson's jaw tightened. Sir, every situation is different. How? The man pressed. How is his situation different from mine? We assess each transaction based on multiple factors, such as… The manager fumbled for words. Behind him, Miranda had finished her call and was watching nervously as more customers began paying attention to the conversation. Look, Henderson said, I don't have to explain our internal policies to every customer. This woman has been asked to leave. She's refused. End of story. Actually, said a voice from near the door, I think the story's just beginning. Everyone turned to see a young black man in an expensive suit walking through the entrance. He was maybe 28, with close-cropped hair and the kind of confident stride that commanded attention. He surveyed the scene with sharp eyes, taking in the phones, the crowd, the tension. Marcus? Keisha said, surprise evident in her voice. The young man nodded at her, then looked at Henderson. I'm Marcus Thompson. I believe you've met my friend Keisha here. Henderson studied the newcomer warily. Are you here to cause more problems, Mr. Thompson? And no, I'm here to solve them. Marcus pulled out his phone and started recording. I'm documenting what appears to be a clear case of discrimination at this establishment. Sir, please put that away. We don't allow filming in the bank. Actually, you do. It's a public space, and judging by the number of other people recording, your policy seems pretty selective. Marcus looked around the lobby. How many of you have seen this woman do anything threatening or illegal? Heads shook. Someone called out, She's been nothing but polite. Henderson's face was growing redder. This is private property. I'm asking you all to stop recording and mind your own business. But it is our business, the young white woman said, still filming. This is our bank, too. Outside, the first police cruiser pulled up. Through the tall windows, everyone could see two officers getting out of their car, adjusting their duty belts, preparing for whatever situation they'd been called to handle. Here come your boys, Marcus said to Henderson. This should be interesting. Henderson looked around desperately. The lobby was full now. Word had spread somehow, and people were filtering in from the street. Social media notifications were buzzing on phones throughout the crowd. Jerome, he called to the security guard, clear these people out. Jerome looked at the crowd, then back at his boss. Sir, they're not doing anything wrong. They're just watching. They're interfering with bank business. No, Keisha said, standing up as the police officers approached the entrance. We're witnessing bank business. There's a difference. The automatic doors whooshed open, and officers Patricia Hayes and Michael Rodriguez stepped inside. Hayes, a black woman in her 40s, immediately assessed the crowd. Rodriguez, a Latino officer with 15 years on the force, instinctively moved to create space. Who called this in? Hayes asked. Henderson rushed forward. Officers, thank you for coming. We have a customer who's refusing to leave the premises. She's been asked multiple times, but she won't comply. Hayes looked at Keisha, then at the crowd of people with phones out. Ma'am, what's your side of the story? I came here to withdraw money from my business account. They refused to process the transaction and then called you when I asked why. How much money? $15,000, Rodriguez frowned. That's a routine transaction. What was the problem? Henderson jumped in. Large cash withdrawals require additional verification. She couldn't provide adequate documentation. I provided everything they asked for, Keisha said, holding up her folder. Tax returns, business license, bank statements. They barely looked at any of it. Hayes examined the papers. To everyone watching, it was clear that Keisha's documentation was thorough and legitimate. "These look fine to me," Hayes said to Henderson. "Why couldn't you process her withdrawal?" The question everyone had been waiting for hung in the air. Henderson looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at his employee Miranda, who was suddenly very interested in her computer screen. We have policies." "What policies?" Rodriguez asked. Henderson's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Do you know who you're talking to?" Marcus asked quietly. As the tension in the lobby reached a breaking point, Keisha's mind drifted momentarily to the journey that had brought her to this moment. 3 years ago, she'd been working double shifts at Memorial Hospital, saving every penny while studying for her nursing degree. The discrimination wasn't new. She'd faced it in college, in job interviews, in grocery stores and restaurants. But she'd always found ways to navigate around it, to smile and comply and move forward. That changed the day her daughter Maya asked why the other kids' mothers got to volunteer at school events, while Mommy was always at work. The question broke something inside Keisha. Not her spirit, but her willingness to accept limitations others tried to place on her life. She'd used her medical background to start a private healthcare consulting business, helping elderly clients navigate insurance claims and medical bureaucracy. What began as weekend work had grown into something substantial. Contracts with 3 nursing homes, a growing client base, legitimate revenue that allowed her to quit the hospital and be present for Maya's childhood. The $15,000 she was trying to withdraw represented 3 months of careful savings. Maya had been accepted to a prestigious summer program for gifted students, a chance that could change her daughter's entire educational trajectory. But the program required payment by 4 p.m. today, and the check had to be cashier's check, not a personal check or bank transfer. Standing in this marble lobby, surrounded by phones and whispers, and the growing certainty that her simple errand had become something much larger, Keisha thought about the phone call she'd received from Maya's school just 2 hours earlier. "Mrs. Williams? This is Principal Davis. I'm calling because there's been an incident involving Maya." Keisha's heart had stopped. "What kind of incident?" "Well, some of the other children were saying things about her scholarship status, questioning whether she really belonged in the accelerated program. Maya handled it beautifully. She told them her mother built a business from nothing and earned every penny they had. But I thought you should know." Even at age 9, Maya was already learning the lessons Keisha had hoped to shield her from. The constant questioning, the assumption that success must be borrowed or stolen or undeserved. The exhausting requirement to prove worthiness over and over again. "She asked me if it was true that some people don't think we belong in nice places," Principal Davis had continued. "I didn't know what to tell her." That conversation was still echoing in Keisha's mind when Miranda Collins had looked at her ID with that particular expression. The one that said, "I see what you are, and I know you don't belong here." The stakes weren't just financial anymore. They weren't even just about Maya's summer program, though missing that deadline would crush her daughter's dreams. This had become about something bigger, the right to exist in spaces without having to justify that existence, the right to conduct business without being treated like a criminal, the right to teach her daughter that their success was real, earned, and unassailable. Keisha had built her consulting business by being 3 times as prepared as anyone else. She carried backup documentation for everything, answered questions before they were asked, smiled through microaggressions, and never gave anyone a reason to doubt her professionalism. She'd played by every rule, followed every protocol, exceeded every expectation, and here she was, being treated like a potential bank robber for trying to access her own money. The business had grown beyond her wildest expectations. Last month, She'd been approached by a major healthcare corporation about a consulting contract that would triple her income. She'd been featured in the local business journal as one of 30 under 35 entrepreneurs to watch. She had every document proving her legitimacy, every record showing her success. None of it mattered to Miranda Collins or David Henderson. In their eyes, she was still just a black woman who must be up to something. "Mrs. Williams," Officer Hayes was saying, pulling Keisha back to the present moment, "your documentation looks completely legitimate. I'm not understanding why there's a problem here." Keisha looked around the lobby, at Marcus recording everything, at the customers who had transformed from bystanders into witnesses, at the bank, employees who were beginning to realize this wasn't going to end quietly. "Officer," she said, "I think the problem is that they looked at me and decided I didn't belong here. Everything that happened after that was just them trying to justify that decision." The words carried across the marble space with crystal clarity. Several customers nodded. Marcus smiled grimly behind his phone camera. Henderson opened his mouth to protest, but Officer Rodriguez held up a hand. "Let's get to the bottom of this," Rodriguez said. "Ma'am, show me exactly what documentation you brought." As Keisha opened her folder once again, she thought about Maya waiting at school pickup, trusting that Mommy would handle whatever needed handling. She thought about the summer program deadline ticking away. She thought about all the black mothers and fathers and children who would see whatever happened next. The stakes had never been higher. Officer Rodriguez examined Keisha's documents with the thoroughness that Henderson and Miranda had pointedly avoided. Tax returns, business license, insurance documentation, bank statements going back 18 months. Everything was meticulously organized and legitimate. "Mrs. Williams," Rodriguez said, looking up from the papers, "your business registration shows gross receipts of over $200,000 last year. Your account balance is well above the withdrawal amount. I'm not seeing any red flags here." Henderson stepped forward desperately. "Officer, you don't understand our internal policies. Large cash withdrawals trigger certain protocols." "What protocols exactly?" Officer Hayes interrupted. "I've worked with banks for 15 years. A $15,000 withdrawal from an established account with proper documentation is routine business." The crowd had grown larger. Word had spread on social media, and people were streaming in from the street. A local news reporter had arrived and was setting up near the entrance, her cameraman testing angles. "Mr. Henderson," Marcus said, still recording, "would you mind sharing how many customers you've called the police on this month?" Henderson's jaw worked silently. "How about this year?" No response. "Let me ask a different question. How many white customers have you asked to provide documentation for withdrawals in the $15,000 range?" "I don't have to answer these questions." "Actually," said a voice from the crowd, "you might want to." A well-dressed black woman stepped forward. "I'm attorney Janet Morrison from Morrison & Associates. I've been watching this entire interaction, and I'm documenting what appears to be a clear case of discriminatory banking practices." Henderson's face went pale. A civil rights attorney with a crowd of witnesses and video evidence was his worst nightmare. Furthermore, Attorney Morrison continued, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, this bank could face significant federal penalties for discriminatory practices. Not to mention the civil liability. Miranda finally looked up from her computer terminal. "Mr. Henderson, maybe we should just process the withdrawal?" "It's too late for that," Marcus said. "The damage is done. This woman was accused of fraud, threatened with arrest, and humiliated in front of a room full of people, all for trying to access her own money." Officer Hayes looked at Henderson pointedly. "Sir, at this point I need to ask, do you have any legitimate reason to suspect criminal activity?" We have to be careful about money laundering." "Mrs. Williams," Hayes said, "do you mind if I ask what the money is for?" "My daughter was accepted to a summer program. Payment is due by 4 p.m. today, and it has to be a cashier's check. The officer checked her watch. 3:58 p.m. A murmur went through the crowd. Someone called out, "They're making her miss her daughter's deadline." Henderson realized his mistake too late. Denying educational opportunities for a child, especially with cameras rolling and social media spreading the story, was about the worst possible optics. "Look," he said desperately, "we can process the withdrawal right now. Miranda, get the paperwork started." "No," Keisha said quietly. Everyone stopped. I said no. Henderson blinked. "But you wanted—" "I wanted to be treated like a customer, like a human being. Instead, you treated me like a criminal and called the police when I insisted on my rights." Keisha's voice was steady, but it carried to every corner of the lobby. "Now, you want to process my withdrawal because there are cameras and lawyers and witnesses?" The crowd was completely silent. "Mrs. Williams," Henderson said, sweat beading on his forehead, "I apologize if there was any misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Marcus looked up from his phone. "You accused this woman of money laundering and fraud. You called her aggressive when she calmly requested her own money. You had the police called on her for the crime of banking while black. What exactly did we misunderstand?" "That's not—" "We don't discriminate here." "Then explain," Attorney Morrison said, "why a white customer last week withdrew $22,000 without any additional documentation or police involvement." Henderson's mouth fell open. "How do you—" "Because I represent him in an unrelated matter. And he told me about the transaction. Smooth as silk, he said. In and out in 5 minutes. The news reporter stepped forward with her microphone. "Mr. Henderson, I'm Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. Can you comment on allegations that this bank routinely discriminates against minority customers?" "No comment. No cameras in the bank." "Security!" But Jerome, the security guard, didn't move. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with the expression of a man who'd seen enough. "Jerome!" Henderson barked. "Sir," Jerome said slowly, "I've been working here 15 years. I've seen you process large withdrawals for white customers without batting an eye. I've never seen you call the police on someone for trying to access their own money." Until today, the admission hit like a thunderclap. Someone in the crowd said, "Damn!" Phones shifted to capture Jerome's testimony. Henderson looked around wildly. His authority was crumbling in real time, broadcast live to thousands of viewers as the social media posts spread. "This is insane," he muttered. "It's company policy." "What company policy?" Officer Rodriguez pulled out his notebook. "I'd like to see this policy in writing." It's not written down exactly." "So it's an unwritten policy that applies selectively to certain customers?" Henderson realized he was digging himself deeper with every word. Keisha stood up slowly. The crowd parted slightly, giving her space. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every black person who'd been denied, dismissed, and disrespected. "Officer Rodriguez, I want to be clear about something. I came here as a customer conducting legitimate business. I was treated as a criminal based solely on assumptions about who I am and what I deserve access to. That's not a misunderstanding. That's not a policy. That's racism." The word hung in the air like a bell that couldn't be unrung. "And now," Keisha continued, "when there are cameras and witnesses and legal consequences, suddenly everyone wants to make things right. But some things can't be undone. My daughter's deadline has passed. My reputation has been damaged. My sense of safety in my own community has been shattered." She looked directly at Henderson. "So no, Mr. Henderson, I don't want you to process my withdrawal now. I don't want your apologies or your damage control. I want accountability." The crowd erupted in applause. Cell phone notifications were exploding as the video spread across social media platforms. The reporter was already calling her news desk. Henderson looked at Officer Hayes desperately. "Can't you make them leave? Clear the bank?" Hayes looked at him with something approaching disgust. "Sir, These people are witnessing a potential civil rights violation. They have every right to be here. Marcus stepped forward, still recording. Mr. Henderson, you asked who I was earlier. I think it's time you found out. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. Marcus Thompson, he said, handing it over. Chief of Staff to Mayor Thompson. Henderson looked at the card, and his face went completely white. That's right, Marcus said with a cold smile. Mayor Thompson is my father. And trust me, he's going to be very interested in what happened here today. Henderson stared at the business card like it might burst into flames. The elegant city seal, the official letterhead, the name that every person in the city knew. Mayor Robert Thompson, the first black mayor elected in the city's history, and a man known for his zero-tolerance approach to discrimination. The mayor's son, Henderson whispered. That's right, Marcus said, his phone still recording. And before you ask, yes, he already knows I'm here. Yes, he's watching the live stream. And yes, he's already called an emergency meeting with your bank's board of directors. As if on cue, Henderson's phone started buzzing. The caller ID made his hands shake. City Hall, Mayor's office. Aren't you going to answer that? Marcus asked pleasantly. The crowd pressed closer. The news reporter signaled her cameraman to zoom in. Social media notifications were going off like popcorn as a banking while black began trending nationally. Henderson's phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Mr. Henderson, Officer Hayes said, I think you should take that call. With trembling fingers, Henderson answered. Hello? Mayor Thompson's voice was calm but deadly serious, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. David, this is Mayor Thompson. I'm watching a live stream of my son documenting what appears to be discriminatory practices at your branch. Would you like to explain what's happening? Henderson looked around desperately. Phones were recording from every angle. The crowd had grown to over 50 people. News vans were pulling up outside. Mr. Mayor, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, the mayor's voice cut through the bank like a blade, is your staff's misunderstanding of basic human decency and federal banking law. Attorney Morrison stepped forward. Your Honor, I'm Janet Morrison, civil rights attorney. I've documented the entire incident. This appears to be a textbook case of discriminatory banking practices. Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Henderson, are you aware that discriminatory banking practices are a federal crime? Henderson's voice cracked. Sir, we don't discriminate. David. The mayor's voice was ice cold. I have a room full of witnesses, multiple video recordings, and the testimony of your own security guard saying otherwise. Do not lie to me. Jerome stepped forward. Mr. Mayor, I've worked here 15 years. I've never seen treatment like this for a routine withdrawal. Never. The mayor's voice carried across the lobby. Jerome Washington? Is that you? Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Jerome, your granddaughter goes to school with my niece. You're a good man. I trust your judgment. Sir, this lady was treated wrong from the minute she walked in. Called police for trying to get her own money. It was discrimination. Plain and simple. The words hit Henderson like physical blows. His own employee testifying against him to the mayor, with cameras rolling and the story spreading across social media in real time. Keisha stepped forward. Mr. Mayor, my name is Keisha Williams. Your son arrived just as this situation was escalating. I want you to know, he didn't create this problem. He's documenting the solution. Mrs. Williams, I apologize on behalf of our entire city for what you've experienced today. This is not who we are. Actually, Keisha said, looking directly at Henderson, this is exactly who some people are. The difference is that today there were witnesses. Henderson's phone was now buzzing constantly with calls from regional management, corporate headquarters, and news outlets. He could see his career evaporating in real time. Mr. Mayor, he said desperately, surely we can handle this internally. Internally? Marcus looked up from his phone, which showed the live stream had over 100,000 viewers. David, you're trending on 3 social media platforms. The story's been picked up by CNN, Fox, MSNBC, and The Washington Post. There is no internally anymore. Sarah Chen, the news reporter, stepped forward with her microphone. Mr. Henderson, our newsroom has received calls from 12 other customers reporting similar treatment at this branch. Would you care to comment? Henderson looked like he might faint. Officer Rodriguez closed his notebook. Sir, based on what I've witnessed, I don't see any criminal activity on Mrs. Williams's part. However, I am filing a report about potential discriminatory practices that may warrant federal investigation. The mayor's voice came through the phone again. Mr. Henderson, I'm going to make this very simple. You have 2 choices. You can take immediate corrective action, suspend the employees involved, implement comprehensive anti-discrimination training, and make full restitution to Mrs. Williams. Or you can explain to federal investigators why you chose not to cooperate. Henderson looked around the lobby. Every face was hostile. Every phone was recording. Every second of delay was being broadcast to thousands of viewers. What kind of restitution? He asked weakly. Attorney Morrison stepped forward. Compensatory damages for emotional distress, punitive damages for discriminatory practices, legal fees, and immediate policy changes to prevent future incidents. Plus, Marcus added, my father is recommending the city review all contracts with banks that engage in discriminatory practices. First National holds several municipal accounts worth, what would you estimate, Dad? Roughly $12 million annually. The mayor's voice came through the phone. Henderson's legs nearly gave out. Miranda Collins, who had started this entire incident, was now frantically typing at her terminal. Mr. Henderson, I can process Mrs. Williams's withdrawal right now. No additional documentation needed. Too late, Keisha said firmly. The damage is done. Marcus tucked his phone into his pocket and looked at Henderson with the expression of someone who held all the cards and was about to play them. David, before we go any further, I think there are some things you should know about the woman you just humiliated. He gestured to Keisha. Mrs. Williams isn't just any customer. She's the founder of Williams Healthcare Consulting, the company that's been working with the city's Department of Aging to reform elder care practices. Henderson's face went even paler. She's also, Marcus continued, the business owner who identified the billing irregularities that saved the city over $2 million in Medicare fraud last year. My father personally commended her work. Keisha looked surprised. Marcus, how do you know about... Because I'm the one who recommended your company for the contract. Marcus smiled. I've been following your work for months. When the Department of Health needed someone to audit nursing home compliance, your name was at the top of every list. Attorney Morrison nodded approvingly. Mrs. Williams, I've heard of your work. You exposed the Sunset Manor case, didn't you? Among others, Keisha said quietly. Henderson looked confused. What case? Officer Hayes shook her head in disgust. The nursing home that was stealing from elderly patients made national news. Mrs. Williams's investigation led to criminal charges and a complete overhaul of state regulations. The crowd murmured with appreciation. Several people started Googling Keisha's name on their phones. So let me get this straight, Sarah Chen said, pointing her microphone at Henderson. You called the police on a woman who's literally fighting healthcare fraud and protecting elderly citizens? Marcus pulled out his phone again. Dad, are you still there? I'm here, son, and I'm putting you on speaker. The entire city council is listening. A collective gasp went through the crowd. This wasn't just about one incident anymore. This was being discussed at the highest levels of city government in real time. Councilwoman Maria Rodriguez's voice came through the phone. Mrs. Williams, this is Maria Rodriguez. We met at the healthcare forum last month. I had no idea this was you. Councilwoman Rodriguez? Keisha replied. still maintaining her composure despite the surreal nature of the situation. "Mrs. Williams," came another voice, Councilman James Patterson. "Your work saved my mother-in-law from a predatory billing scheme. Our entire family owes you a debt of gratitude." Henderson looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. Marcus held up his phone so everyone could hear. "Dad, I think the council should know that Mrs. Williams was trying to withdraw money to pay for her daughter's educational program. The deadline was 4 p.m. It's now," he checked his watch, "4:17 p.m. "What program?" Mayor Thompson asked. "The Advanced STEM Academy Summer Intensive. Full scholarship, but families have to pay for housing and materials up front." Councilwoman Rodriguez's voice turned sharp. "She missed the deadline because of this nonsense?" "Mrs. Williams," the mayor said, "what's the program fee?" $15,000, Keisha answered. "The same amount you were trying to withdraw." "Yes, sir." There was a moment of silence on the phone. Then Mayor Thompson's voice returned, harder than steel. "Mr. Henderson, you didn't just discriminate against a valued city contractor. You potentially sabotaged a child's educational future." The crowd pressed closer. Someone whispered, "This is insane." Marcus looked directly into his phone camera, addressing the thousands of viewers watching live. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what systemic racism looks like. A successful black businesswoman, a pillar of the community, treated like a criminal for conducting routine banking business. And when she stood up for herself, they called the police." Henderson's phone started ringing again. The caller ID read, "Regional Director, Emergency." "Answer it," Officer Hayes said. It wasn't a request. Henderson put the call on speaker with shaking hands. "David, this is Regional Director Patricia Walsh. I'm watching the news coverage." "What the hell is happening at your branch?" "Ma'am, there was a customer service issue that got blown out of proportion." Blown out of proportion. "David, you've got the mayor's office, city council, civil rights attorneys, and national media covering a discrimination incident at our bank. The stock price has dropped 3% in the last hour." Attorney Morrison stepped closer to the phone. "Ms. Walsh, this is Attorney Janet Morrison. I represent Mrs. Williams, your branch manager and senior teller, engaged in discriminatory practices that violated federal banking laws, who authorized calling the police on a customer making a routine withdrawal." Henderson looked at Miranda, who was trying to become invisible behind her terminal. We followed protocol." "What protocol calls the police on a customer with legitimate documentation and a verified account?" "Silence. David, you're suspended pending investigation. Miranda Collins, you're suspended as well. Jerome, are you there?" "Yes, ma'am." "You're acting branch manager until we sort this mess out." Jerome stood a little straighter. "Thank you, ma'am." Regional Director Walsh's voice continued through Henderson's phone. "Mrs. Williams, I want to personally apologize for the treatment you received today. This is not representative of our bank's values." "With respect," Keisha replied, "it's representative of these particular employees' values. And they work for you." "You're absolutely right. Here's what's going to happen immediately. First, your withdrawal will be processed with a formal apology letter. Second, we're implementing mandatory bias training for all staff. Third, we're reviewing every large cash transaction from the past year to identify any patterns of discriminatory treatment." Marcus held up his phone. "Ms. Walsh, the mayor's office will want to review those findings." "Of course. We'll provide full transparency to city officials." Attorney Morrison stepped forward. "Ms. Walsh, we'll also need to discuss compensatory damages for the emotional distress, reputational harm, and educational opportunity Mrs. Williams has suffered." "Understood. We'll have our legal team contact you within 24 hours. Officer Rodriguez closed his notebook. "I'll be filing a report recommending federal civil rights investigation. Mrs. Williams, you have grounds for both federal and civil complaints." Henderson stood in the middle of the lobby, like a man watching his life collapse in real time. "Mrs. Williams, I truly apologize. This wasn't supposed to happen this way." Keisha looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of every black person who had faced similar treatment without cameras or witnesses or the mayor's son to advocate for them. "Mr. Henderson, I don't think you're a bad person, but your actions today were wrong, harmful, and based on assumptions you made about me the moment I walked through that door. You saw a black woman asking for a large amount of cash, and you decided I must be up to something illegal." Henderson started to protest, but Keisha held up her hand. "The problem isn't just what you did. It's that you did it automatically, without thinking, because you've been trained by society to see people who look like me as threats rather than customers. That's not your fault. But continuing that pattern without examining it, that is your responsibility." The lobby was completely silent. "I'm not interested in destroying your life," Keisha continued, "but I am interested in making sure this never happens again. Not to me, not to my daughter when she's older, not to any black person who walks into this bank." Marcus stepped forward. "Mrs. Williams, regarding your daughter's program, I spoke with the director while you were dealing with all this. They're holding her spot. The deadline has been extended." Keisha's composure finally cracked slightly. "Really? Really? And the city has voted to cover the program fees as compensation for what happened today?" Tarzan Coenzierd welled in Keisha's eyes. For the first time since the ordeal began, Mayor Thompson's voice came through the phone. "Mrs. Williams, this city failed you today, but we're going to make it right." Sarah Chen raised her microphone. "Mrs. Williams, what do you hope people take away from what happened here?" Keisha looked around the lobby, at the cameras, the crowd, the phones still recording, the bank employees who had learned a hard lesson about assumptions and consequences. "I hope they understand that discrimination isn't always loud and obvious. Sometimes it's polite and bureaucratic and hidden behind policies. But the damage is just as real. And I hope they understand that we all have the power to speak up when we see injustice. Whether we're the mayor's son or just another customer in line." The crowd erupted in applause. 3 months later, Banking While Black incident, as it became known, sparked nationwide conversations about discriminatory banking practices. First National Bank implemented comprehensive bias training across all branches and established a civil rights compliance office. Henderson and Miranda were terminated after the investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory behavior toward minority customers. Jerome Washington was promoted to permanent branch manager and became a regional trainer on inclusive customer service. Marcus Thompson used the incident to launch a citywide initiative auditing business practices across all municipal contractors. 12 companies lost city contracts due to discriminatory policies. Attorney Morrison filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of other customers who had experienced similar treatment, resulting in a $2.3 million settlement and binding policy changes. Most importantly, Maya Williams thrived in her STEM program and became a local advocate for educational equity. At age 9, she addressed the city council about the importance of standing up for what's right. "My mom taught me that dignity isn't negotiable," Maya told the packed council chambers. She could have accepted their apology and walked away. Instead, she stood up not just for herself, but for everyone who comes after us. The viral video of Keisha's confrontation with the bank was viewed over 15 million times and became a case study in business schools across the country about the costs of discrimination and the power of social media accountability. 6 months later, Keisha's consulting firm was hired by the Federal Reserve to develop new protocols for identifying discriminatory banking practices. As Keisha often tells audiences when she speaks about that day, sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom or a government office. Sometimes it comes from regular people with cell phones who decide that enough is enough. Change happens when ordinary citizens refuse to be bystanders to injustice. Sometimes, the most powerful banking transaction is the one that never gets processed, but transforms everything that happens after. Subscribe for more incredible stories of justice and accountability. If this story of Keisha Williams standing up to discrimination moved you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We bring you real stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when faced with injustice. What would you have done in Keisha's situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination in a business setting? Share your story. Your voice matters. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of race or background. And share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Remember, justice isn't a spectator sport. Sometimes standing up for what's right changes everything.